The year Eli Voss harvested his first crop from the dead Pelletier orchard, he had a problem nobody had warned him about. Too many apples. Not too many good apples, though there were plenty of those. Too many seconds. Drops. Bruised fruit. The ones that fell before picking. The ones that split on impact. The ones with surface scars that made them unsellable at market, but perfectly edible underneath. In a 12-acre orchard with over 200 producing trees, that amounted to roughly 4,000 kilograms of fruit that Eli had no idea what to do with. His neighbors drove past and saw the pile growing. They laughed. One of them stopped his truck at the fence and called out, "Boy, you traded a dead orchard for a pile of rotten apples. That an upgrade?" Eli did not answer, because 3 weeks earlier, a woman named Dorothy Crane had knocked on the gate of the Pelletier orchard and asked him one question that would change the entire economics of what he had built. She had asked, "What are you planning to do with your drops?" What happened next is the part of Eli's story most people never heard. This is the rural file, and this is Dorothy's chapter. Dorothy Crane had lived 3 farms down from the Pelletier orchard for 22 years. She was not a farmer. She was, by the county's official understanding of things, a home baker who sold preserves and baked goods at the Harwick County Farmers Market on Saturdays. That was how the county saw her. Dorothy saw herself differently. She had started making apple butter in her 3rd year in the county, when the Pelletier orchard was still producing, and Gerald Pelletier would sell her 2nd-grade fruit at a steep discount every autumn. Gerald's drops became Dorothy's best product. The bruised ones, the small ones, the ones with a soft spot on one side, they cooked down into the richest, most complex apple butter Dorothy had ever tasted, because damaged fruit concentrates its sugars differently than perfect fruit. When the Pelletier orchard went dark, Dorothy's source disappeared. She spent 4 years substituting, buying commercial seconds from a distributor in the next county, never quite getting the same result. Then she heard that the old Pelletier place had been bought by a teenager. She drove past 3 times before she stopped, then she knocked on the gate. "What are you planning to do with your drops?" Eli looked at the pile he had no plan for. He said, "I was going to compost them." Dorothy said, "No, you're not." Dorothy's proposal was straightforward. She would buy Eli's drops in seconds at a fixed price per kilogram, considerably below market rate for sellable fruit, but above zero, which was what they were currently worth to him. She would use them to expand her production, and she would split the revenue from any new product line created directly from Pelletier orchard fruit, with Eli at a 15% royalty on net sales. Eli was 17 years old. He had never heard the phrase net sales royalty in his life. He called Mrs. Darrow, his agriculture teacher. Mrs. Darrow came to the kitchen table, read Dorothy's handwritten proposal and said, "Eli, this is a fair deal. Better than fair. Take it." There was only one problem. Dorothy's kitchen operation was not built for what she was now imagining. Her current production, 200 jars of apple butter per season, plus a range of baked goods, consumed her entire available time during autumn. Adding 4,000 kilograms of drop fruit to her processing pipeline would require an operation 3 times the size of what she currently had. She would need a commercial-grade cooker, a second production table, a labeling system that didn't involve her handwriting every jar individually at the kitchen counter at midnight, and a cold storage solution for the fruit between picking and processing. She had $4,200 in her farm account. The equipment she needed would cost somewhere between $8,000 and $14,000, depending on whether she bought new or sourced second-hand. Her husband Raymond, the same Raymond who had stood at the fence watching Eli work all winter with his arms folded and a skeptical expression, looked at her spreadsheet and looked at her and said, "Dorothy, you're going to turn rotting apples into a business." It was not a question. It was not enthusiastic. Dorothy said, "I'm going to turn imperfect apples into a premium product. There's a difference." Raymond looked at the numbers again. Then he said, "How much do you need?" She borrowed $6,500 from Raymond's equipment fund. She found a second-hand commercial cooker at a restaurant supply auction in the next county for $1,100. She built the second production table herself from lumber sourced at the same supplier Eli had used for his farm stand. She ordered a thermal label printer that cost $340 and changed her production speed permanently. By the time Eli's first drop harvest arrived in September, Dorothy's kitchen had been converted into something that no county health inspector would have called a farmhouse kitchen any longer. It was a production facility, a small one, but a real one. The first batch Dorothy made from Eli's drops was not apple butter. It was something she had been working on in small quantities for 2 years, but had never had enough of the right fruit to produce at scale. She called it Pelletier Reserve, not apple butter, not apple sauce, not apple jelly. A concentrated spiced apple paste, made from the highest sugar, most aromatic drops and seconds, cooked to a reduction that took 6 hours per batch, spiced with cinnamon, cardamom, and a half teaspoon of black pepper per batch, that she had learned from a letter her mother had written her in 1987 about a preserve she had tasted once at a market in Lyon, France, and never forgotten. Dorothy priced it at $14 a jar. Her regular apple butter sold for $6. Her neighbor Janet, who sold preserves at the same farmer's market, looked at the Pelletier Reserve jar at Dorothy's stall and said, "Dorothy, $14 for apple paste." Dorothy said, "Would you like to try it?" Janet tried it. Janet bought 2 jars. The first batch of 180 jars sold out in 6 market Saturdays. The cidery that had bought Eli's Calville Blanc harvest the previous year discovered the Pelletier Reserve at the market and called Dorothy on a Tuesday. They wanted to offer it in their tasting room. They wanted 48 jars a month, consistent supply, and they wanted to put the Pelletier orchard story on the label. Dorothy called Eli. Eli called Mrs. Darrow. Mrs. Darrow said, "Say yes, then figure out how." Dorothy said yes. She figured out how. The first full season of Pelletier Reserve production, running from September through December of that year, produced 1,120 jars. 120 went to the farmer's market. 480 went to the cidery's tasting room across 4 monthly deliveries. 300 went to a specialty food store in the county seat that Dorothy had approached in October, with 2 sample jars and a 1-page product sheet she had typed herself on her laptop at midnight. The remaining 220 went to an online store she opened in November on a handmade goods marketplace platform, where Pelletier Reserve sold out its entire inventory in 9 days, following a review posted by a food blogger who had bought a jar at the cidery. 15% of net revenue went to Eli Voss as his royalty. That was just over $2,000, on top of what he had already made selling the drops to Dorothy at the agreed price per kilogram. Dorothy's net revenue after cost of fruit, equipment loan repayment, packaging, and market fees was just under $9,000, from imperfect fruit, from the apples her neighbor had called rotting, from the pile that had made people slow their trucks to laugh at Eli's fence line. Raymond did not say anything when he saw the season's figures. He did not need to. He had already started clearing the old equipment shed to give Dorothy more production space for the following year. What Dorothy did with Eli's rotting apple pile was not complicated. She asked one question nobody else had thought to ask. She looked at waste and saw a raw material. She looked at imperfect fruit and saw higher sugar concentration. She looked at a teenage boy with no idea what to do with 4,000 kilograms of drops and saw a supply chain. None of that required special knowledge. It required a different kind of attention, the kind that looks at a problem and asks what it could become rather than confirming what it currently is. Here is what Dorothy's chapter of this story leaves behind. The first thing, waste is a design failure, not an inevitability. Every farm operation produces seconds, drops, culls, and imperfect outputs. Most of them go to compost or landfill because nobody has asked the question Dorothy asked. The question is not complicated. The answer almost never is either. The second thing, the premium is in the story, not the product. Dorothy's apple butter sold for $6. Pelletier Reserve sold for $14. The fruit was from the same orchard. The difference was provenance. The name, the history, the specific soil, and the specific teenager who had believed in those trees when nobody else would. People will pay more for something with a story than for something without one. Always. The third thing, the person who asks, "What are you going to do with that?" is often the most valuable person in any supply chain. Dorothy did not grow the apples. She did not plant the trees, or prune the dead wood, or spend her winters in the cold learning renovation, pruning from YouTube videos. But she saw value in what Eli couldn't use. That vision was worth 15% of everything she made from it. And the fourth thing, Raymond was wrong. She was not turning rotting apples into a business. She was turning overlooked value into exactly what it had always been worth. Once someone was paying the right kind of attention. The neighbor who stopped his truck to laugh at Eli's drop pile bought a jar of Pelletier Reserve at the farmer's market in November. He did not know it was made from the pile he had laughed at. He paid $14 for it. He came back the following week for 2 more. Dorothy did not tell him. She didn't need to. The Pelletier Orchard and Dorothy Crane's production kitchen now operate as a formal partnership. Harlan Farm Supply and Pelletier Reserve are listed on the same market stall sign, with Eli's name and Dorothy's name both visible on the Pelletier Reserve label, where it lists the orchard and the producer. 2 people, 1 12-acre orchard, 0 waste, and a bank account that stopped being a source of anxiety. The November Dorothy delivered her 4th case to the cidery and deposited the check on the way home. This is the rural file. Every farm has a Dorothy waiting at the gate. The question is whether you let her in. Subscribe for stories from the farms, valleys, and counties that hold the real history of how people feed themselves and each other. New story every week. If Dorothy's chapter of this story taught you something about waste, about value, about the question nobody thought to ask, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And drop this in the comments. What's the overlooked resource on your farm or in your life that nobody has asked the right question about yet? We read every one.